one thing which I've taken away for the wealthy is that they're very serious about growth. They make sure that the money is compounding over a long period of time. In the US, by the way, that people are running out of money in their older age.
People are running out of money because of bad planning or because of inflation?
No, they didn't factor in the fact that they will live so long.
Oh shit. What do you think Adani and Mukesh Ambani do with their own money? And by that I mean not Reliance's money or Adani Group's money, their own money as men. Now there's countless content pieces on YouTube, on Spotify where you can learn about money. But it's these kind of conversations with experts from the world of finance, people who manage money in the range of 50,000 rupees in savings to 50 crores in savings per month. That's the experience, the financial know-how of our guest today. It's Sandeep Jethwani on the show. His startup, Dezerv.in, is a modern-day portfolio management service. Personally, for me, most of my money is handled not by myself, but by portfolio management services. I trust this man enough to give him my own money. He is handling some of BeerBiceps Media World's funds. That's why I thought that on this episode, let me give you guys access to someone who has given me financial advice, someone that I trust my money with. It's going to be a very raw and open conversation about everything from how the richest in India manage their money to how you can manage your money even if you're just beginning your career right now. It's a financial education special on the Ranveer show. For more episodes like this, follow us on Spotify. We're a Spotify exclusive, which means that every episode is available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world. This is Sandeep Jethwani of Dezerv.in on the Ranveer show. Enjoy yourselves. Mr. Sandeep Jethwani, welcome to the Ranveer show.
Thank you, Ranveer. Amazing to be here, man. And I love the setup that you have here.
No, thank you, dude. On this show, we have only two themes. Very raw, emotional vulnerability.
Wow.
Or smart Sindhis who come on and teach us about how to make more money. So, welcome to the
Sindhis
show.
will never tell you how to make more money. They will tell you how they can make money.
No, sure. I mean, the best financial advice I've always gotten from in my life is from the Sindhi.
And what was that?
It starts with basic shit like begin doing something with your money. And you hear that as a teenager when your Sindhi bros are already making money and you're like, what is happening here? I'm playing these video games, they're making money. Yeah. Then it becomes, you need physical assets, don't just do mutual funds. Then it becomes something else. Instead of real estate, do REITs. Yeah. So there's different versions of it, man.
Yeah, I think Sindhis are always under pressure because people are always asking them how to make money. And I'm not sure we know so much about it. So
the outside perspective is that you all know everything, man. Jai Jhulela.
Jai Jhulela.
So this podcast, we're calling it How Rich People Make More Money. You'd given me a really interesting data point outside the balcony when we were talking to each other. But I also want to give some context here to the listeners. You handle a lot of people's money. You're basically, I'm boiling it down too much, you're sort of in the wealth management space, in the modern day wealth management space. You're also in the fintech space. Yeah. I feel you have access to a lot of data. You have an incredibly smart team. For me, these conversations are a lifelong habit to just become better with my understanding of money.
Yeah, I think people need to get serious about their money. I think there's a lot that's changing. But so very happy to have this conversation.
Let's start off with the data point you gave me outside so that listeners know where India's at when it comes to the world of finance.
So the strange thing about India, so there's this concept of a Gini coefficient. A Gini coefficient tells you that how much is the concentration of wealth in the hands of a few people, right? And I'll just simplify this. So the top 1% in India, 2 decades ago, used to own 23% of India's wealth. So what does that mean? 1% of India was owning 1/4 of India's wealth, right? So that's a lot of concentration. In the last 2 decades, this number of 23% has moved to 33%. So now the top 1% own 1/3 of India's wealth. Now what's happening here, right? Wealth is getting more and more concentrated in the hands of a few people. What are these guys doing right with their money that folks like us are not doing? Now, one thing they obviously do is they own assets which earn for them, right? They own businesses, they own ESOPs, instead of just renting out their time. So if I'm in a job and that's all the salaries, all the money I make, I'm in a sense renting out my time to my employer, right? I give you my time, you give me money, right? But these guys are owning assets that are actually growing. So that is the biggest difference that the wealthy in India are doing, or globally also, is that they're owning growth assets. They're owning assets in which they've put in money, which over a long period of time will actually multiply in capital. And that's why it's very, very important for us also to ensure that we have growth assets in our portfolio. India is in a transition phase. For a long time, and you spoke about it, right? Everybody would tell you buy a house, put money in an FD, etc. That was okay at a point at which we were trying to maintain our wealth. But now that we have to grow our wealth, you need assets which actually will compound over time. Equities, alternative assets, etc. So I think that's one thing which I've taken away from having managed money for the wealthy, is that they're very serious about growth. And it's not just something that ठीक है पैसा लगा दिया अभी देख लेंगे. They make sure that the money is compounding over a long period of time.
Gotcha. Do you watch Black Mirror on Netflix?
I haven't, but I've heard so much about it.
Okay. You know what the show is about,
Yeah.
right? It's about futurism,
Correct.
as in technologies that are around the corner,
Yeah.
how they're going to enter our lives and probably mess shit up for us.
Yes.
So, Black Mirror talks about elongated lifespans in some of the episodes.
Right.
And generally, futurism is one of the subjects I study a lot. We are heading towards a future where our lifespans are actually going to increase a lot more.
We won't die.
So here's something I've thought of a lot. A lot of worldwide intellectuals have also spoken about this concept. And even Ronnie Screwvala spoke about this on the show. He said that now your life has become a lifelong college where you have to keep learning things.
Correct.
60 is the new 30. So, usually people looked at age 60 as one of those points in your life where you stopped working. Amitabh Bachchan, case in point, made most of his current wealth after the age of 60.
Correct.
But this is going to become a reality for all of us.
Yeah.
They say anyone born after, say, 1980 is actually in for a very long life.
Yeah.
That got me thinking about personal finances. So, personal finances used to scare me. Eventually, I learned that you roughly need about 3 crores, 4 crores to live a lavish life in Bombay. But what is the truth about this whole scenario, man? Like for a college kid watching this or for a young professional watching this, how should they look at their lifelong finances?
I think there was a point in time when we could just like save more money and that would be okay. So let me just put it in context, right? When I was born, in 1980s, the average lifespan of an Indian was 50 years. And you realize how short that is, right? In 10 years, I'll be 50. So that would be the average lifespan of an Indian 4 decades ago. Today, the average lifespan of an Indian is close to 70 years. And in about, say, 10 or 15 years, that number will be 80, 85. A lot of us here or watching this will probably live to the age of 90 and 95, right? Now, to have a decent life at the age of 65 onwards, and if you're living till the age of 75, 10 years, you need about 1 crore, which will also grow a little bit.
You're keeping inflation in mind.
Keeping inflation in mind, keeping in fact that, see, if I retire at 65 and live till the age of 90, I have 25 years ahead of me. Okay. And you're already seeing this in the US, by the way, that people are running out of money in their older age, right? US has social security. India doesn't have social security. What do? We don't have pensions and stuff like that, right?
People are running out of money because of bad planning or because of inflation?
No, they didn't factor in the fact that they will live so long.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Right? And in a sense, it's a good thing that medical science has evolved to keep us alive for really long. But now what do? When you hadn't planned that in your... So conventional retirement logic is like get to 1 crore. This 15-15-15 rule, everything is built around getting to 1 crore. But today now we'll have to get to, let's say, 5 crores. Or in dollar terms, say $1 million, which is about 7 odd crores. That should become now the new target. Now, that has implications on how much we save. Saving is very important. But how we invest what we save is becoming even more important than it ever was.
Okay, so let me put you in the spot, Mr. Jethwani. I'm going to give you a little game to play.
Sure.
let's take 5,000 rupees,
Yeah.
50,000 rupees, 5 lakh rupees, and 5 crore rupees as your monthly savings. So, say a student or just a young professional is able to save 5,000 rupees.
Yeah.
Someone who's slightly older is at 50,000. An established professional is able to save 5 lakh rupees. And say a mega businessman is able to save 5 crore rupees every month.
Yeah.
And all four are coming to you. Give me the case A, B, C, D of what you would do as a money expert with that money.
So now to answer the question about, see, as your quantum of money is scaling, what needs to also scale is your ability to tolerate risk, right? When I have 5,000, 50,000 to invest every month, the first thing should be that my emergency fund needs to be covered, right? God forbid something happens to me, my job, etc. There should be enough money for my family to manage lifestyle, right? And which means that first I will fill the emergency fund bucket. So therefore, somebody who has 5,000 should potentially be filling up that bucket with all the money that they have, right? Whereas somebody who has 5 lakhs or 5 crores has probably already filled that bucket, and therefore the money that they have is all available for them to grow.
What's a good number for an emergency fund?
Again, very dependent on the quality of life you want to retain, right?
But I'm assuming emergencies are for medical emergencies. Like, what other emergencies can there be?
I lose my job.
Okay.
And then I have to pay for my family's
Food, whatever.
food,
Roti,
etc.
kapda, makan.
Exactly, roti, kapda, makan, school fees, etc. Right. So that differs for different people.
Gotcha.
The rule of thumb is having 6 months of your lifestyle expenses is a good place to start, where you ensure that at least 6 month ka kharcha is there safely parked away. God forbid something happens, I have that. So somebody who's saving 5,000, strong recommendation, first fill that bucket, right? But by the way, we don't see this, right? We see this gambling thing happen where like चल यार 5,000 है 10,000 है कुछ करते हैं इसको double करते हैं triple करते हैं, right? And you start seeing a lot of trading and all of that stuff, crypto lately, etc. Right? So that's what happens. Shouldn't happen. Instead, just get done with your emergency bucket, get your insurance, all of that in place, so that you're in a comfortable place. Now you want to start figuring out how to grow my capital. And that's where this becomes important, that how much risk can I tolerate, right? So let's break it down into phases, right? Step 1, you said take care of your emergency bucket. Step 2, figure out what is the risk you can tolerate and accordingly decide how much growth assets you will have, right? So if you're wealthier and you can tolerate a lot of risk, by all means, buy more growth assets, right? Which will compound, which will get you to that 5 crore, 6 crore number, which you need at retirement to live a really good life for the next 25, 30 years, right? If I'm saving, say, 5 lakh rupees a month, I would probably be putting more money into equity mutual funds, etc., which will compound over a period of time. If I start saving, let's say, 1 crore a month, I'm now talking about investing in pre-IPO, early stage, late stage startups, etc., global assets, which will potentially multiply my capital even further.
What are global assets? Like?
So, there are many ways to diversify your money. Today, most Indians have all of their money in rupee assets, like everything exposed to India, right? But globally, there are interesting opportunities, and we do that on our platform, where there are interesting opportunities available outside of India.
Basically, the richer you get, the more options you have in terms of investing your money.
Correct.
What you invest in is totally dependent on your own risk appetite and many other factors like your age, etc.
That's right.
But if we boil it down to even like further basics, when you're say at that 50,000 or 5 lakh rupee mark, usually people are thinking of mutual funds. Thanks to Ankur Warikoo, no one's thinking of FDs anymore. But what other asset classes would you keep? Maybe gold, REITs, things like that.
So mutual funds is a very broad category by themselves, right? There is equity funds, there is debt funds, there are hybrid funds, there are international funds, there is gold funds. Very soon you're seeing a lot of other stuff like silver, etc. All of that happen, right? So mutual funds is a very large category by itself.
How does a person with 50,000 rupees as savings know which mutual fund to select?
Yeah, first of all, the ideal thing is get an expert, like to do it for you. But if you can't do that, we don't want to do that, then I think the right framework would be first figure out what are the different asset classes. So there is equity, debt, gold, etc. And then within every asset class, there are sub-asset classes. So within equity, there's an index, there's a large cap, mid cap, small cap, many other. And then within them, there are... So I would say that start at the top. The biggest decision that you can get right or wrong is what asset classes you have in your portfolio, in what proportion. The key thing here is that get that allocation right. Like figure out what is the right equity allocation in your portfolio. Out of 100 rupees, are you putting 50%, 75%, 80%? That's a very personal decision.
So let's start with the 50 lakh rupee a month in savings. What do you notice generally happens? That's about, the mark that a lot of content creators hit, by the way.
Really?
Through their, not a lot, but maybe the ones who've been around for a while.
Sure. Yeah. So, somebody who has 50 lakh rupees a month, I think the one thing is that probably their core portfolio, right, which is their, and I'll explain what a core portfolio means, right? The core portfolio is still growth, still oriented towards appreciation. You want to multiply capital, but it is liquid at any point. Now, what does liquid means? You can pull it out at 2 or 3 day notice, right? For somebody who has 50 lakhs rupees a month and has been making it for a few months or a few years, potentially that core bit has now started to get completed, right? Now, I would normally recommend that if you had overall 100 rupees to invest, 75 should be in this core portfolio, right? Because this is the portfolio which moves up and down with the markets, but you can pull it out at any point. You might need money. You might decide to start a new business again, right? And you've created a whole host of businesses. In the future, you want to start a third business or a fourth business. This is the capital that you will dip into, which will be available to you. So this core portfolio is now ready. You have 50 lakhs a month to invest. What do? You start diversifying into what I call alternative investments. You start investing in private equity. You start investing in global hedge funds. You start investing in high-yielding fixed return instruments like P2P loans, etc.
Why don't you also just kind of touch upon what the private equity market is? Like, how is it different from the stock market?
Yeah. So private equity is investing in shares of a company, just as it is on the stock market, except that in the stock market, you can sell the shares at any point of time and get out, right? In case of what is private equity, it's private, which means that you can't buy and sell it the way we can buy and sell a stock, right? In case of the stock markets, usually, and there are exceptions, but usually you place an order to sell within the next 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, it will get sold, right? Here, there is no secondary market. You will have to approach other people to sell it. So you have to know that you are invested in this company for a really long period till you get an opportunity to exit, which is not in your control, right? So that is private equity. Now, private equity also has multiple stages, and we've done a lot of content around this aspect. So let me start with the safest within private equity. By the way, as an asset class, it's very risky, but the safest within private equity is pre-IPO, which is a company just before it is going to get listed, right? So that is pre-IPO. Then there is late stage equity. Late stage equity is companies mature, doing reasonably well, but not yet ready to go towards an IPO, right? Then there are mid-stage companies, which are companies which have potentially just turned profitable or are beginning to now turn profitable. And then there are early stage companies. Early stage companies are very early, maybe 3 or 4 years in their journey, potentially still requiring capital to survive and grow. And then there are seed. Seed is where the company is not even formed. It's just an idea and a team, right? And you are funding that. Now, what happens is the risk level goes higher as you go down this. So the pre-IPO is the least risky among private equity, and seed is the most aggressive among private equity. What do smart people do? Even within private equity, suppose I had 100 rupees to invest, I would put more money on the pre-IPO side and much lesser money on the
Risky
seed
stuff.
side. Risky stuff. Yeah. But you have to know that this money is not available to you whenever you want it, right? This is like you parked it away. and your life shouldn't depend on this.
But we're talking about the 5 crore mark, Mr. Jethwani.
Yeah.
What would you do if someone's saving 5 crore rupees every month? What would you do with that bag of money? First of all, can someone earning that kind of money expect higher returns? Almost? Because there's that much more of a risk appetite.
See, look, I think very few people make 5 crores on a monthly basis. Right? What happens typically is an entrepreneur who is running this business for many years, does well, decides to sell the business for 100 crores, 200 crores. That's what we have seen happen, right? Rarely do people get 5 crores of new cash flow. Companies get it, but as individuals, you rarely get it, right? Unless you're like this super, successful lawyer and stuff like that. There are exceptions. But most of the time, the super wealthy get a large lump sum of capital at a single point of time, right? Their challenge is that ab tak business chala rahe the, it was doing well. A foreign company came, offered them a value, and they sold their business for 100 crores. And now they have 100 crores. What do they do with it, right? So that's typically the kind of stuff that you see when it happens with the ultra wealthy. And what do they do with it, right? The first thing that they focus on is get this asset allocation right, okay? And again, boring, not cool, not something that you talk about, but building a structure around your money, right? See, the point is that once your money reaches a certain size, you have to build a logic around how to manage it. It can't be done on whims and fancies anymore because the costs of a mistake now run into crores, right? So first, they would sit down and say, okay, this is what I want out of my money, okay? Let's say 5 crores I want to keep aside for a new business my daughter might start. So they'll keep that 5 crores aside. Then, okay, so now you have 95 crores. Then they'll say, okay, 5 crores I want available at any point of time for whatever reason. So now you keep 5 crores aside. Now you have 90 crores. What do you do with 90 crores? Then you say, okay, look, I think that out of that 70 crores I want available at any point of time, but I can invest it for the long term. That becomes their core portfolio, right? And now you have 20 crores, which they will invest in these new assets, alternative assets that over a period of time will grow their capital, right?
But with these kind of clients, and I'm sure you've seen people like this who come in with a bag of 100 crores, what age are they usually at? I'm assuming they'll be around 40.
That age is going down.
Okay.
Very rapidly.
Okay.
Right? Because back in the day, and I started working in 2005, right? My first few years of managing money for people was me moving around in a black and yellow taxi in the streets of Kalbadevi in Bombay, and I'll be the only guy in a suit and go there. There would be this very large sari shop and this guy sitting in a kurta pajama on the floor, and he would have 10 crores, 20 crores, 50 crores to invest, right? Cut to now, where a few years ago, I would be managing money for people who are a tech entrepreneur, who's probably early 30s, sold off a business to a Google, etc., and got 100 crores, and suddenly they behave and look very different, right? So I think it's a very broad range, but I think it's safe to say that, and this is the exciting thing about India, is that the age of the wealthy is also beginning to come down, because as new entrepreneurs are getting created, they are getting creating value for themselves, and therefore the average age of the person that a wealth manager in India is talking to is actually come down.
Yeah. What I also love about the tech entrepreneurship space is that the teams also make the money.
Yeah.
It's not just the founders.
Yeah.
And that's one input to people being an entrepreneur. Not everyone's built to be an entrepreneur. There's too much trauma that comes along with that. Like there is an exchange of mental health involved.
Absolutely.
But if you're involved in the early aspects of growing a startup, if you're one of the early team members, you have a chance at making that big bag. I'm answering a question that a lot of people are thinking about.
And I think that, there is this, and we were just discussing it on the way here, is that there is so much focus on the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
This whole spotlight is there. But so much of the reason why that business is doing so well is because of the team that actually put it together, right?
Have you heard of the concept of Ubuntu?
Ubuntu, yeah. So Ubuntu was one of the mottos. In fact, our first careers page at Dezerv was titled Ubuntu.
Yeah, 100%.
You're the team and the team is you.
Yeah. So anyway, my answer for this 100 crore, 5 crore question is play the safe game again. Imagine that you don't have 100 crores, treat them like 10,000 rupees. What you would do with the 10,000 rupees? Or a little more. Treat them like 10 lakh rupees.
Yeah. So, so if you have, if you have 10 lakh rupees to invest, what would you do, right? Like I said, 75% core portfolio, which is the long-term portfolio that you have, right? Get your asset allocation right, or get your financial advisor to get to this point, right? And by the way, most people will ask their financial advisor, "Yaar, ab bata kya karna hai?" Right? And that's not a great conversation. That's not a great way to start a conversation with your financial advisor. Great financial advisors would first understand you before they tell you what to do. It's like a doctor, right? When you go to a doctor, when you walk in, does a doctor, he probably knows what medicine to give you even before he's talked to you, right? But he will still ask you what's going on, what's happening, etc. So what is happening in their head? They are building a framework. That is what a great financial advisor should do, right? And even in our platform, like one of the things we do, we're a digital platform, right? But we encourage our users to do a call with an investment expert, so that if required, we can personalize the investment to them.
I know for a fact that my case, as in what I am doing with my money currently, is very different from what you usually
Why is that?
do. I'm possibly playing one of the most risky games out there with money.
No, so there are two parts, right? One is the risky game that you're playing as an entrepreneur. But then there is are you also playing that risky game with your money?
In terms of whatever I've saved?
Yeah. Outside of the businesses?
Yes and no. One, because the first PMS firm I worked with, as I told you, so a huge chunk of my money is there. Like say about 30% to 40% of my khud ka jeb ka paisa is there. Another 30 to 40% is in the startup ecosystem where I've invested as an angel. And a lot of money has been pumped back into two businesses which have bootstrapped and grown. Wow. And we are raising money, and we're finding it relatively easy to raise money on both. So that's the hook here. That's why it's not so risky when you look at it, on a macro level.
Yeah.
But I have bootstrapped till this point. Till this point, my financial game was very, very risky.
Right.
And I have very few safe as in if you look at the whole portfolio, there's a very small amount that's completely safe. But I'm also not married, and I'm not going to get married for a while.
So I think, you have like what got you here and what will get you further will probably be different, right? And I think the recognition of that when it comes to your money also is very important. You do that in your business, right? What takes a seed stage business from 0 to 1 will not take it from 1 to 100, right? 100%. Different things work for you. You transform as an entrepreneur. You should also then transform as an investor. So again, and this is something that people do, right? Where people say, yaar, isse mujhe paisa bana tha, so let me do more of that. And that's like doubling down on the one thing that worked. And there are so many luck factors that made that one thing work that now you can't put all your money back into that same thing, right?
I also want to add one angle here. The reason I've been so risky with things is because I kind of caught the right wave of influencer marketing. I was around before it began.
Yeah.
And I was able to sustain as it rose. And I'm at a stage where it's rising even further. Pure influencer marketing. People say, whatever, it's a bubble, it might go away. I don't know about that, but that's the reason I'm playing such a risky game. That I know that even if I lose all the money I've made till now, probably make it back in like a year or two. And I'm okay. Like my risk appetite as a person is really high.
You know what? Actually, it'll be interesting. Like we manage money for a lot of influencers. What is it that you think is changing when it comes to the influencer industry in general? Because that has a bearing on how we'll manage their money, right?
More money is going to come in from brands for sure. We're seeing a lot of... Dude, I've seen it over the years, man. In 2016, we had to explain to brands what influencer marketing means and how it's scientifically efficient for them. Like, how they'll actually get an ROI, etc.
Yeah.
It's reached a point where now it's almost become like a thing. No, it had reached a point where brands were just like throwing in money. Now brands are a little more intelligent about how and where they allocate the influencer marketing budgets. Now, what that means for the influencers is that there's no bullshit now. The people with the fake followers, the fake engagement, they are kind of getting like left behind.
Yeah.
The people who are not reinventing themselves creatively or not putting out content that's creating stickability, it works like the product world. Like you need to keep retaining your users. They're getting left behind. But the ones who've been able to sustain and grow at this point, say 5 years in, 6 years in, they have sort of this proven pedigree in terms of, we've seen 3 generations of content creators, amongst which you have many people who've come and gone. So there must be something right that the ones who've sustained are doing. And for me, sustenance is like you cross the 6-year mark. So if anyone's crossed the 6-year mark, it says that yes, they're capable of reinventing content, they're capable of sustaining themselves financially, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So these guys are going to create this sort of consolidation within like the influencer space, as in they call OG creators.
So what I love about what you are doing is the fact that you've taken your personal brand and converted into a business, right? Business, I mean, you've incubated a couple of business. So you have the cash flow of a individual brand and plowed it back into the equity of companies, which is your own companies, right? And I think that's the interesting thing that a lot of influencers can learn from, where you've sort of reinvested that money in a way that now it will grow for itself, right? And that's not very common.
But don't you think that's an obvious, like, why do you think other creators don't do that? And I'm not fishing for compliments. I'm trying to understand. See, in retrospect, in my own journey, it was a very obvious next financial step. I, in fact, started doing this even before I started investing in mutual funds.
Let's park the influencer thing on one side and let's take the example of, let's say, Bollywood. Okay, right? There were so many stars at different points of time who made a lot of money in their day, but they ended up in almost poverty, right? What happened during that period? To me, and a lot of it goes back to how you save and how you invest that money, right? A lot of them ended up getting caught up in these chit funds, get rich quick schemes कि यार अच्छा 10 लाख डालो 25 लाख हो जाएगा 50 लाख हो जाएगा, etc. And I think, and that's the point, that India didn't have great financial advisors. We have
or YouTube.
No comments there. So no, by the way, okay, look, I think on a serious note, YouTube is doing and people on YouTube are doing a great job of educating people about money, right? And that is needed. Today, at least, the fact that we can openly talk about money, right? Like there's this whole thing that which Rockefeller said once, that sex and money are two things that only in the bedroom that you talk about. You don't talk about in the living room. At least now money you talk about in the living room, right?
I didn't know that was a quote, dude. That's such a reflection of society back then. For me, talking about money is a very normalized thing, man.
It wasn't, right? It would be crass to talk about, oh, I'm saving this much and I'm investing here, etc. Yeah, it's a generational change. You'll probably, like in my parents' generation, nobody would talk about money, right? You would probably show it off, but you wouldn't say that, okay, I'm buying this or investing here, etc. And that's the good thing about what financial influencers on YouTube have done. But the thing is that, and if I am somebody who absorbing that content, I shouldn't like just copy what they're saying, because what they're saying maybe applies in a generic sense to most people. It may or may not apply to me. Like if somebody tells me to buy this stock, they don't know what my other portfolio is. They don't know how much risk I can handle.
It's like getting medical advice online, in a way.
Yeah, and you don't do that, right? Right? Or you don't go to a chemist and say, "Acha, bata," like you go to a professional, a doctor who will tell you what to do. So I think that is one thing that India doesn't have enough of financial advisors, and this problem was most acute a few years back, and therefore a lot of these Bollywood personalities who made it big lost money, right? I ended up in paupery. So I think that is one thing that is changing, I feel, with the new generation. And we've seen that with cricketers also, or like sportsmen, where they're now really smart about their money, their contracts, etc. And that's the great thing, right? So I would think that a lot of influencers potentially don't like put thought behind the fact that unless they reinvent themselves, and even then there's a risk that the current cash flow may not last. So what they have right now needs to be invested really well, so that when the sparks burn out and they move to some other thing, they have enough capital to survive.
Dude, on YouTube, I don't know why we're talking about YouTube in this finance conversation, but the most painful part of this career as a creator is the phase of reinvention, which lasts 3 to 6 months. It's horrible.
And you don't even know whether it'll work, right?
Exactly. And often it doesn't. So a reinvention phase is often not just one reinvention, then you're good. It's 3-4 experiments, all of which suck, because the thing is you're getting your clout and your money and your name through the numbers you're bringing in, through your fame, basically. And in that 3 to 6 month period, why have you even begun reinventing? Because your numbers have gone down. So you need to change some shit up. Now imagine you do an experiment which fails, you expect it to bring you up, it takes you down even further.
And then it's a spiral.
Yeah. So, and a lot of people get lost in that downward spiral. It's a very mentally traumatic game, and I'm not trying to highlight YouTube as this, holier than thou career or anything. I'm just sharing perspective. I've done it thrice, maybe in my entire 6.5-year journey. But fuck, I don't wish it on anyone, dude. Like, you go through a lot. Again, you know why? Because you are the face of that business. You are that one person in that business, which answers my previous question in terms of why did I put money into something? The answer was because there wasn't just one face. That was a system dependent thing. It was a team that I was investing in, not myself.
So tell me, how do you keep your sanity during the point where, and the thing with influencers and to a certain extent also with entrepreneurs is that you attribute everything to yourself, right? Success or failure is then attributed to yourself. And when it's success, it's heady, right? It's great. Everything is good. But जब failure होता है तो लगता है मेरे वजह से हो रहा है. So how did you break out of that mental zone?
So at this stage, honestly, it's about Ubuntu, because in reinventions, the pressure also gets divided into my top team, top layer of my team. I've consciously hired a lot of leaders to work with me across all the 4 startups. So be it Monkey, I have a leadership core which I work with directly there. Be it BeerBiceps, I have my top layer of leaders who make their own decisions. They add a certain energy to the whole room, to the whole office. That helps me from a mental health perspective.
Yeah, how do you break out of that? If you're in a downward spiral where some of the content that you're putting out is not working, how do you pick up yourself and then say again the next day try something new?
Dude, you have to just pummel through it. It's not nice, man, because sometimes even that pummeling, again, it takes 6 months.
Yeah.
So you're just trying different experiments all the time and just eating up the failures, moving on to the next one. Parallelly, you're getting so much feedback from your management, from your PR, from your own team, from your audience.
Too much feedback sometimes?
I think that's the trick. Can you manage to take all that feedback and still look at it very from a detached perspective and look at it as an engineer and mathematical. So
yeah, actually a lot of people even in life and in business, right? You feel this has got me here, so let me keep squeezing.
Yeah.
And there's only so much juice an orange will deliver to you, right? After then you have to throw it and get something else. Yeah. So I think that's really unique, right? Not many people get that.
You said you work with a lot of influencers,
creators.
We do. What do you notice? Because you're someone who, if you're managing someone's money, you'll get to know the person, you'll get to know their priorities. What do you notice? Everyone's different, or there are some similarities?
No, everyone is different, because now the interesting thing is that there are influencers across age groups, right? So there are influencers who are older who've seen periods where they didn't have enough money, etc. So they have, whereas some of these younger influencers like you spoke about have made a decent amount of money very early on. So their perspective on life and money is different. You're shaped by your own experience, right? And Morgan Housel has an interesting quote where your experience is 0.0001% of the world's experiences, but it is 100% of your decision making, right? So everyone is different. But the thing with older influencers also, they're very focused on creating a strong pool of second income from their money, right? Because they know that this can stop sometime. They will try new things. They will try and reinvent themselves, but sometimes it may not work, right?
Would you count me as an older influencer? I don't give a shit about age and all that.
No, so I think you're an experienced guy. You've sort of been through this and you've created now multiple businesses. So I would put you in the sort of more mature influencer category.
The reason I ask you this is I want to understand what you mean by the subjective word older. Do you mean someone with a family? Do you mean post 35 or something like that?
No, somebody who's seen the cycle of a business going up and down.
Gotcha.
So actually, let me rephrase that. It's not older but mature, right?
Okay.
When you know that the party can stop either briefly or permanently, and therefore you plan your money in such a way that it will last you longer.
And this is true for sports people as well as actors and people from the media.
It's relevant to any profession which has a potential shorter lifespan, right? Till the time you reinvent yourself. And in other professions also it happens, but that period is much longer, right? So if I am let's say a doctor, right? Yes, new technology will come in to replace me, at some point, let's say if I'm a surgeon, robotic surgery is coming in, and over time they will take over, but it's a slow process. It doesn't happen overnight. So because it's a high stakes thing, right? When like I am as a patient putting my life in the hands of a robot, most people are still not comfortable. They would want an experienced surgeon to handle it. But in low stakes stuff like entertainment, the change can be much faster. So if you are in a low stakes where the consumer, for the consumer it's a low stake investment, then your lifespan as a creator or as a professional overall can be shorter, and therefore preparing for that is very important.
Intense. Let's change up the flow of the podcast, and this is my hero question for this episode. What do you think Adani and Mukesh Ambani do with their own money? And by that I mean not Reliance's money or Adani Group's money, their own money as men.
For them, I think it's about like, it's now beyond money. It's beyond the returns that the money is generating. There's a concept of self-actualization, Maslow's hierarchy, right? Once you reach a certain stage in age, you don't care so much about the next 5 crores, 10 crores, etc. You're about what impact am I creating? Am I creating a legacy? And I think a lot of these folks are now creating a legacy, right? They're more concerned about what they can do with their money that will actually create meaningful impact, such that people will remember them for that. So I think it's the concept of self-actualization, basically.
Got it. Something interesting you said. I actually had Sadhguru on the show recently.
Yeah.
And Sadhguru has this ability to kind of, I mean, at the end of the day, he's an old, wise, evolved man. I asked him advice for myself. And legacy was one of those things I was thinking about a lot. Not because I have hit a point in my financial journey where I feel like I'm done. I'm not done at all. Long way to go. But I just was thinking about legacy as a concept because I heard some people on the show tell me that legacy is their driving force.
Yeah.
So it got me thinking about what my legacy is. And that was a question I didn't have an answer to, other than social work, which I've been doing for a while. And I asked him, what, I mean, I didn't say anything about legacy. I think he guessed it through my questions or whatever. And he said that if you wish for your name to be remembered, even beyond your death, instead of thinking about what you can build, just focus on immensely helping people make their own lives easier right now.
And I guess you're already doing that, no? Like there's so many people listening to your podcast, taking away stuff. Like we have people in my office who are big fans of TRS, and for them it's about like, they would rather spend that 1.5 hours or 2 hours of their life listening to this, because they're taking away something which can help them, right? It's not only entertainment now.
I'm aware of the fact that I know my content is deep, I know it's evergreen, etc., etc.
Yeah.
I'm always asking myself, okay, what next? In terms of, I really want to get into people's houses and help them.
Yeah.
So I have this one dream of through what do I want to do specifically in social work. Definitely want to help orphans, want to help old people, and want to help stray animals. Why can't I create places in and around big metros which combine all three in one location and to make it mutually beneficial?
You know, the interesting thing with even this or social work or philanthropy in general is that even when you're talking about this with your investment manager, wealth manager, this has to be it paying for itself. Like, any philanthropy or any charity that you run or do, if it is dependent on you continuing to fund it, then there's a problem, right? Because it will then, like, after a certain point of time, you will have different priorities. You'll move on to another charity. There'll be a bigger cause that you will have to sort of pay attention to, right?
I'm assuming that this is what they mean by trusts. Like when you say trustees or trusts, that's what trusts do. It's a big bag of money which is handled by financial experts. Therefore, there's profits coming out from that same bag of money, and then it's fueled into like social work.
That can happen for sure and must happen, right? The money that you put inside that trust should grow, and now Section 8 companies, different ways to manage it, but should grow in and of itself to serve and support that charity. But we have to look at charities and trusts also as a business, a not-for-profit business, right? In the sense that, can they generate revenue over and above the investment returns? such that they can fund themselves. And that's the power of like social media. Your own brand can get attached to it in a way that people who also believe in that cause would love to participate if they know Ranveer is backing it. Right? And I think that is the true legacy, because then you've made a sort of charity or a philanthropy which is running on its own.
Whoa, I feel super Sindhi today. Thank you, Mr. Jethwani. This was
has
a good
been fun.
episode, man. But also thank you for giving me a convenient way to not give a shit about what's happening with my money.
No, it's a big responsibility, man. I think managing money is so personal to everyone, right? And for everyone, it's about what it can do for their lives and their family, that we lose sleep over how we are managing money for everyone else.
Yeah. Do you have any feedback for me? And I want to ask you about the tough feedback. In terms of, I know you've done some maths about my situation, but what do you think? You have any advice? What do you think I'm doing wrong?
I wouldn't say wrong, Ranveer. I think the thing is that you've actually figured out that fact that you have to invest in new businesses, and I don't mean it in a way to flatter you, but a lot of people don't get that you have to convert from a place where, and Naval Ravikant talks about it, where you're renting your time to owning a share of an asset where other people are working for you, right? And I think that transition everyone has to learn from. So, like, I think the fact that you're at this age having a conversation about money, thinking about where to put money, I think that's the best thing. So I think that comes from a place of humility, by the way,
Really?
because you know that this one may not last, like this party may not last, right? And that is in a sense an acceptance of the fact that yaar, agar ye nahi chala, which means that you're accepting the fact that at some point this might not work. You're creating new sources of income, new assets.
For me, I mean, I think fiction, like fictional movies, shows, and mainstream sports are a good reflection of where society is at. So be it the Indian cricket team, which has suddenly become aggressive and kind of going for it against Australia or England, versus the movies we see nowadays about growth and, optimism and patriotism. I would like to believe that India's in this very kind of aggressive hunting mode, which I love.
Yeah.
As a capitalist, because one, it satisfies me and my financial ambitions on a personal level, but two, for the country, it's fantastic. I also strongly believe that no government in the world is capable of changing a country the size of India overnight.
Yeah.
And it's going to be the entrepreneurs and the thought leaders who actually create on the ground kind of changes.
Yeah.
So it's a good place to be going, man.
No, absolutely. And we are all lucky to be living in this country at this point in time.
Yeah, for sure. Jai Jhulelal, that's all I want to end it with. Yeah. Thank you, Sandeep.
Thanks,
This
Ranveer.
is
Really
fantastic.
had fun on this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm glad. I think people gained a lot of value.
I hope so too.
We'll see you soon, Mr. Jethwani.
See you soon, man.
See you. That was the episode for today. There's never a conversation with this man where I don't learn something new about money. I'm kind of glad that you guys are happening to witness this particular conversation, because as you can tell, I had a lot of fun on the podcast. I learned even more about money through this one conversation. And I'd also like to know from you guys what else y'all would like me to ask Sandeep Jethwani. I'd love to bring him back on BeerBiceps. We're all about learning about personal finance from smart Sindhi men and women. So please, also give me your financial guest recommendations. Very open to bringing people like this on the show so that you guys get free of cost education. The one thing I do request of you is that if you're an avid listener of the show, do share these episodes with your friends and family, especially people who you think will gain value out of these episodes. Lots of people pay for online courses when it comes to this kind of financial education. Through TRS, we're trying to put it out for free, and we'll only grow through your shares and your help. Remember, follow TRS on Spotify. Every episode's available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world. This was a money special with Mr. Sandeep Jethwani on The Ranveer Show. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button, hit that share button, and we'll see you soon.